Creality CR10-SE. 3 months old. I think it's underrated. Let's check it out in a review right now. Basically, we've got the CR10-SE, which is modeled after the very, very successful 2021 model Ender 3 S1 or S1 Pro. Why do I say S1, S1 Pro? Well, as many people know that have been in the 3D printing market for quite some time, enthusiasts, hobbyists, professionals as you are, this build volume looks very familiar. To those of you who haven't seen it, check it out. Pictures right here. Basically what I'm trying to allude to is the whole build frame of the CR10-SE is built off this very, very successful S1 Ender 3 liner. Why has it been given a CR10 label, you say? Well, I feel they've done that because they've seen how successful the S1 and S1 Pro was from the Ender series, and they've incorporated a lot of features that generally the CR10 market is reserved for. Why they've labelled it as CR10, I would say because it's a premium line. The CR10 is generally renowned for being a premium line genre, I suppose you would say. I don't know what else to call it, but basically that's why they've called it a CR10. It is basically an Ender 3 S1, S1 Pro V3 series premium, thus the CR10-SE. So what have we got? Well, we start off, we've got the classic S1, S1 Pro build volume. Why is this important? Well, one of the reasons is it's a large platform build plate. That means it is sturdy, it is strong. It has a full aluminium cast build plate and assembly frame. So unlike the Ender 3 V3 SE and Ender 3 V3 KE, which you'll also see my review video up here, basically it doesn't have a cast molded injected plastic base, which means it's not going to be light. You can't pick it up with one hand and throw it away everywhere you want to be. But that's not to say that those printers aren't any good either, but this is more of a premium build. It has proper extrusion aluminium cast Z-axis frame rails. It has 42 by 48 motors for the dual axis lead screws with a rear timing belt at the rear, which is very important for keeping your bed level. Now, what separates this in terms of usability from, say for instance, the Ender 3 KE? This is one of the top end Creality's bed slinger models. It incorporates a base linear rail and also an inverted linear rail on both the Y and X axis. What does this mean? Well, basically instead of having linear rods, we have linear rails. What's the difference? They're both linear. There is a difference. With a linear rail, you have a square rail with a sealed bearing that rolls backwards and forwards, whichever way it's mounted. With linear rods, the rods are round, they're a sleeved bearing. They do have the ability to flex and they don't sit on a ridged corner, which means they don't have the same rigidity. A linear rail will always have more rigidity and less flex. That means a linear rail is going to give you slightly more precision at higher speeds. Less flex means better extrusion and nozzle precision lining up with the bed. Less flex means less movement, which means more accuracy within the print at higher speeds. That is a very important key. One of the other things that comes built into as one of the premium features is it has an LED light on and off manually, or it can be turned off by the 4.3-inch touchscreen, which is very similar to those you've seen already released from the mid-2023s right down to now, February 2024, of the Nebula touchscreen interface. It has Creality cloud integration. We have Wi-Fi. We have LAN network connectivity. You can start, stop prints. You can connect to the cloud. You can wirelessly print through our Creality slicer. It can connect to the latest Creality print as well. It has silent step-up motors. One of the other features it has a dual spindle holder. The second spindle holder, I would say, is just an add-on for a storage rack. It is handy to have another spool there in case you want to swap spools over, in case you're doing manual filament changeovers. One of the key features I found on this is it does have the all-metal, that's right, all-metal direct drive extrusion system. Direct drive extrusion system and not a Bowden tube feeder like the K1 series or other PDFE Bowden tube extrusion systems. It is a more premium direct drive extrusion system. The Ender 3 S1 Pro previously had an 80 Newton meter filament pressurized all metal filament extrusion. This one is a 65 Newton millimeter pressure filament extrusion, and basically with a 32mm/second filament feed rate. What does that mean? That means they've refined the pressure on the filament extrusion so that it's not too hard and not too much pressure on the filament as it's feeding through. On top of that, it is a step up from the Sprite extruders that you see on the V3KE and the V3SE, thus it's a premium model and it's a CR. What are the other features you say? Well, one of the other features you'll notice is it has a linear rail on the X-axis, and that's really important. The way it's, not just the way it being a linear rail, but also the fact that it's inverted. It's inverted to a front-facing linear rail, and you say, well, how does that make any difference? Well, a lot of people have put this printer down. It's had an unfair review. Some will say, oh, it's an Ender 3S1 Pro, it's just been revamped, they put some linear rails on it, you know, changed a few configurations, put a new CPU and motherboard on it, put a new drive system on it, new hot end, you know, it's just a premium Ender 3S1 Pro. Well, it's not really. I mean, the only thing that's kept on the Ender, from the Ender 3S1 Pro is they've kept the structural design and the build platform. And to be honest, that's not a bad thing. The S1 Pro is probably the most popular and refined bed slinger that Creality produced from 2021 to 2022. So, you know, why knock a bad thing? You know, it's 2024 now. This printer was released 4 months ago, and it's proven to be a very good printer. In my opinion, probably one of the best bed slinger printers out there at the moment, especially from Creality. And with the all-metal extruder, getting back to that, one of the key things it has on it is the inverted rail at the front. Instead of being top-mounted like the Ender 3KE and some other models, it doesn't slide on top of the rail, it slides on the edge of the rail. Now, why is that important? Well, when it moves side to side, okay, if it's sitting flat on the linear rail, it will have the ability to somewhat have some flex because the bearing interface with the rail can move somewhat. If it's got the weight of the extruder hanging down on the edge of the rail with the bearing sealed inside, there is no flex at all, zero, absolutely none. And of course, on top of that, because the bearing is seated straight in the groove on the top linear rail as it sits on the edge, it has less flex as well. But by being front faced on that front edge, it actually glides a lot smoother on the actual linear rail. Now I can show you that in another video. I'll be doing a CR10-SE versus the Ender 3KE video very shortly after this one. And then I'll go into detail about that as well. And you'll actually see, and not only see, but hear the difference. Well, I suppose you probably wouldn't see it as much with regular printing. With high-speed printing, I dare say you would. It makes the extruder glide a lot more smoothly throughout the movements, thus equaling, I suppose, less friction and a better printing experience, and also a lot quieter too. One of the other things that knocked on this printer as well is the Creality fan that they've installed on this extruder. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I mean, we can turn the fan on now and it's not very loud at all. We'll put the mic next to that so you can hear that more clearly. And that is the fan. Now, to me, that's not too loud at all. So people say, oh, the fan this, the fan that. Well, guess what? It's not a big deal. People say, oh, it sounds like a jet engine. It sounds like a vacuum cleaner. No, it doesn't. Not even remotely close. I review printers for what they are, the good and the bad. I don't try to find something bad to knock a good printer. I find something bad if there is something bad. If there's nothing bad about the printer, then there's nothing bad about the printer. I'm not going to find something and superficially invent something just to make something have a problem just for clickbait. That's not what I do. This fan, in comparison to a K1 Speedy or K1 Max, yes, it's a different printer, but they sound like a mini dustbuster. Now the fan in this printer is actually a very, very good fan. This fan is actually out of the K1 series printers. It is a 0.30 amp, 20 volt fan that spins at 12,000 RPM. That is an awesome printing cooling fan. You're going to get the same power of print cooling and speed as what you get out of the K1 and K1 Max, and that is a huge, important detail that a lot of people left out on this CR10-SE review. Secondly, you also get the ceramic 60 watt hot end with the copper titanium alloy nozzle, and that's a really key feature as well, which means you can print everything here from very similar to Core XY printers, PLA, PETG, PET, TPU, PLA, wood, ABS, ASA, PA, and PLA carbon fibre. Now, to me, that's an incredible list of features, which means you can print abrasive materials on this printer. Why? Because it has the K1 nozzle system, it has a K1 nozzle heating block and heatsink, as well as the cooling fan from the K1 series. On top of that, a lot of things that people aren't mentioning is the simple fact that this CR10-SE also incorporates the same CPU and processing algorithm and motherboard as the K1 series printer. How do I know that? Well, I've pulled the base of them off, I've compared them, and they're exactly the same. They're identical. I've also looked into Creality print, and apart from the G coding being different and the acceleration being different, as opposed from 8,000 from the CR10-SE to 20,000 on the K1 Max and K1 Speedy, the actual motherboard, the CPU are the same. So there's no difference. When you go to Creality print, you can actually it'll actually allow you to choose a profile from the K1 Max. If you say, for instance, slice something in the CR10-SE profile and you go print, it'll select a list of printers you can print to. You can actually send that CR10-SE profile and G code to the K1 and it'll recognize it and print it. So that actually proves my point in telling you that this is actually the same CPU and motherboard and algorithm that the K1 and K1 Max series runs. So there's some really big points there that a lot of people are missing out on their reviews, and I think that's something that really needs to be spread. I think this is an awesome printer. What else have we got? We've got input shaping as well. We've got the PEI flexible build plate that comes included. One of the other great things you get with this printer as well is a self-diagnostic tool. So when you turn this printer on, if you're looking to get into printing, this printing is an awesome printer to get started with. It's beginner friendly, it's intermediate friendly, and for those who have, say for instance, print farms, if you're a fan of bed slingers and you like the easyability of not having a big bulky enclosure or XY printer enclosure itself, and you're not someone who's going to be printing a lot of automotive materials, it's a great printer for print farms. It's sleek, it's compact, and it can print fast. So it says it can go up to 600 millimeters a second. By my testing, I would say that this comfortably prints, quality prints straight out of the box at around 300 millimeters a second. Now it'll do TPU and PETG. TPU it'll do 150. PETG, my testing is suggested around 200 to 250 millimeters per second at max, and that's pretty good speeds. I've got a K1 Max, and the PETGs that I print out of that, the filament, is around 200 to 175. So that's actually really, really good. It's on par with that. What else can I tell you about this printer? You've got a front tensioner for your steel mesh reinforced belts. So on the linear rail, which is a 23 millimeter base linear rail, you have a steel mesh reinforced belt, and you also have a steel reinforced belt on the X rail as well. You don't have linear rails on the X axis lead screws, but you do have roller bearings. I mean, with the Z axis moving up and down, you don't get a lot of movement at a fast pace. That's not something that's going to wear down in a hurry. What else have we got? We do have the switch over from 110 volts to 230. So those of you who are in Europe or in America and so on, that's quite capable of doing that. The other features you get in it as well, it's got a 350 watt power supply, so it's not going to be power hungry. It's got power loss recovery. It's got AI integration, so you can hook up your Nebula camera. You can hook up, say, your Logitech cameras to the two USB dual ports on the side. It has underneath, it has a Type-C input. You can input and plug your G sensor in, so you can do your G-Sense vibration calibration for your input shaping, which is very important, especially for high-speed printing. A lot of people say, oh, it doesn't make a difference. Well, actually, when you're doing high-speed printing, 300 millimeters a second, 250 plus, even up to 400. Not that I'd recommend going 600 millimeters a second, although it says it has a top speed, you can do that. I wouldn't recommend it. But with the input shaping, when you go to those speeds, you do see a visible difference with that. One of the other things you have on this printer is that's different to, say, most bed slingers, especially the other Creality printers in the similar lineup. Just below those is the Ender 3 SE and Ender 3 KE, is basically with the CR Touch system that they have in place. Just turn this fan off if I can. With the pressure sensor, the KE and the SE have a strain release sensor in the bed for mesh calibration, so that the actual extruder comes down with the CR touch, presses on the bed, and detects the input Z offset settings of the bed and the mesh calibration for leveling the bed. The CR10-SE runs a similar system to what the K1 series does, and that actually has an input pressure sensor built into the extruder. It's more accurate because the probe itself for the pressure sensor, strain relief, is on the extruder itself and not off the corner, off the bed. So you get a greater accuracy of bed mesh calibration than what you would if it was on the bed. Well, I think that's a really good improvement as well. Now this printer retails currently at the moment, you can get it on Creality, you can get it on eBay, you can get it on Amazon, and with the dry discount codes you can get it for around $559, Australian that is. If you compare that to the Ender 3 KE, which also comes in at around $479, $469 with coupons, you're only talking around $100 to $120 difference. Now, what are the key differences to take away from that? Well, with the Ender 3, you don't get the dual Z axis lead screws, which means you get a more balanced Z axis movement. You don't get the linear rails, you get linear rods. What else don't you get? You don't get the dual holder, you don't get the LED light included, you don't get the same Sprite all metal extruder that the CR10-SE has. You don't get the same cooling fan of 12,000 RPM print cooling fan that the CR10-SE has. And you don't get the build plate quality for one on top of that as well. So there's many features you don't get. And one of the other things that people aren't mentioning is the simple fact that the KE can be root accessed, and so can the CR10-SE. Now currently at the moment, Creality haven't released an official root access firmware, but on GitHub you can actually get root access done for the CR10-SE. Now why is this important? Well, a lot of people are buying the KE Ender 3 version and they're root accessing the printer. Now root accessing is really important because what that actually does is it opens up the touchscreen support software to enable you to be not locked into Creality print. Now a lot of people use other slicing software like Cura, Prusa, Bamboo Labs, Orca Slicer, Simplify, Super Slicer, and so on. And why is that important? Well, Creality Print as a whole is a beginner to intermediate software for slicing your 3D models. That said, you can wirelessly print, but there's an exception. When you have root access, what that does is it unlocks the ability for you to have full Clipper access on your printer. Now, Clipper being a newer design software that is an open source software, unlike the older firmware that 3D accompanying printers are now phasing out, which was the Marlin software. Clipper gives you a more open source platform. So think of it as in Marlin would be Apple and Clipper would be Android. You know, so you get a lot more open software. You get the ability to run software like Fluid and Mainsail, and that gives you the ability to run programs like Cura Slicer, Prusa Slicer, Orca Slicer, and so on. So what does that give you? Well, that gives you a lot of different things. That gives you the ability to fine-tune your Z offset. It also gives you the ability to fine-tune your mesh calibration. It gives you the advantage of unlocking extra features in your G coding, so you can manually or remotely, whichever you choose, you can log into any phone, any computer, any laptop, anywhere you want, and you can not only visually view your print as it's ongoing, you can adjust flow rates, you can adjust temperatures on the fly, you can adjust your camera, your frame rates, you can do all your input shaping remotely, you can do all your macros, you can change your temperature bed settings, you can change your nozzle temperature settings, you can even change your infill so it gradually flows or doesn't gradually flow in between different types of extrusion settings that you've got mapped into your printing, whether you've got adaptive layers coded into your print file that you're trying to print. There are so many different features you can do at the touch of the button, which Creality Print doesn't have. So that's really, really important. So one of the things that they haven't really touched on in most CR10-SE reviews is the ability to have root access. And that's really, really important. So for the CR10-SE, what are my final thoughts on this? Well, I've had this printer now. Creality sent this to me just before Christmas. Now, I'm not endorsed by Creality. I'm not sponsored by Creality. I've only recently been invited to become an affiliate of Creality. That said, they sent me this printer for free. Now, am I paid to do this review? No. Am I biased in this review? No. Am I going to tell you if this printer is good or bad? Yes. Is this printer a good printer? Yes. Is it worth $550? 100%. Do I think you should buy it if you're an intermediate or beginner? Yes. Is there any other printers on the market that could compare with this printer? Probably so. But are you going to get the same quality and design? Are you going to get the same print head cooling, the same ceramic type extruder, root access, full clipper, mainsail fluid with root access, dual linear rails, 600 millimeters a second, PI flexi build shape, LED lights, and so on? Probably not. So, what does that say about this review? Well, my opinion states this. If you're in the market to get yourself a high-speed bed slinger and you want a quality bed slinger with all the bells and whistles, and you're thinking, oh, do I want an Elegoo? Do I want a Creality? Oh, I don't know what to do. And you've got between, say, $400 and $600 to spend, and the K1 series is just out of your reach, and you're thinking you want to go with Creality, my suggestion to you, buy the CR10-SE. This machine is phenomenal. I will have to say, if you do buy this machine, I would highly recommend root accessing this machine. You can find that link in the description below. I'll post that link in my description below, and that's at GitHub. And I'll also be doing a tutorial video on how to root access not only this machine, the CR10-SE, but also the Ender 3 V3KE. So it's quite simple. Most people are a bit put off by that, but I'll walk through that in the next video on my tutorials. So yeah, getting back to it, what do I think of the CR10-SE? Do I think it's been reused? Do I think it lives up to the name? I think all in all, yes, I do. Yes, they've probably reused some old stock parts. Yes, they've reused some engineering design, but for good reason. If you're looking for a bed slinger, high-speed bed slinger, that can print everything from PLA, PETG, TPU, PLA carbon fiber, PLA wood filament, and it's got a hardened steel nozzle, ceramic heating block, super fast print head cooling, linear rails, all the bells and whistles. I honestly think this ticks all the boxes. I always try to be brutal honest with these videos to help you guys get a better deal for your money. But unfortunately with the CR10-SE, I can't think of anything negative to say. Let's check out some of the prints that I've done, and you can see for yourself. All right guys, so I hope you enjoyed the video. That's the CR10-SE review, brought to you by none other than me. Hopefully I've given you all the information you needed in comparison to what you're looking for in today's market. It is a huge market, I have to agree, and Creality does put out a lot of printers, sometimes maybe not needed as much as what they are put out, but I think they do that just to try and stay relevant in the market, to be perfectly honest. If you did like this video, like and subscribe. It does help the algorithm. I try and do unbiased reviews. I'm just a little guy at the bottom of the earth in Melbourne, Australia, trying to do my best to bring honesty and integrity to the 3D printing market to help you guys make a better informed decision to make use of your hard-earned money to buy a good value printer at a good price. So let me know in the comments below what you thought of the review. And if you're interested in buying a CR10-SE, like I said, Creality sent me this printer to give you guys, to give them an honest review, and for me to give you guys the opportunity to see what the CR10-SE is and what I think of the CR10-SE as well. If you are interested in purchasing the CR10-SE, I have recently become an affiliate of Creality. I do get a 5% commission if you do click the link in the description below. It's only 5%, so anything helps, I suppose. It does go towards trying to create a better channel experience so that I can reach out to more companies and try and give reviews to you guys outside of the mainstream reviews. As a local Australian, giving downright honest, genuine reviews without all the media, glamour, glitz, that everyone else does. So if you like the channel, subscribe, like. Let's try and hit 20K. I'm still not monetized, guys, but I'm grinding it out. I've, trying to my best to give you guys that honest and relevant review. We're not all nerds here. We're not all geeks. We're not all tech heads. Some of us just want 3D printing just to print toys. Some of us just want 3D printers just to print garage tools. Some of us want stuff just to DIY and make stuff at home. So we're not all interested in the absolute tech specs. We just want to know what works, what doesn't, and whether it's right for you. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the CR10-SE review. Like I said, click the links in the bio. There'll be links in the video as well. If you want to check out some other videos, please do so. Like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more. I'll be bringing out the Ender 3 KE root access video and how to versus the CR10-SE, as well as the Sonic pad used with the Ender 3 SE. And I've got some special info on that one for you, so sneak peek on that one. I've found the best filament settings using Orca Slicer and Cura Slicer for your Ender 3 SE and KE. So stay tuned for that one, guys. I'm Chris, I'm out, and this is the CR10 Creality SE 3D printer.